now we have Charles Myers with us today, and he's a great place to get us started, Tim.
Yeah, he's chairman of Signum Global Advisors. Charles spent over 20 years advising candidates in everything from presidential to mayoral races. He now works with financial institutions and multinational businesses to anticipate and assess policy agendas and announcements. Charles, thanks so much for being with us. What does Bidenomics, what does it mean to you?
Well, I think, Bidenomics is really two things. First, it was to get the virus under control, get the vaccine rolled out as quickly as possible, and get $1.9 trillion of emergency COVID relief out into the economy, which they did 2 months ago. The second part, which is the forward-looking part of Bidenomics, is to really spend potentially another $4.2 trillion on infrastructure and other related programs. In the end, Bidenomics is about going for growth out of this COVID recession, going for growth at any cost. The Biden administration understands that in order to hold their majorities in Congress next year in the midterms and possibly hold the White House in 4 years, they've got to bring about the biggest or strongest economic recovery in modern history. And very importantly, they want to make sure it's the most inclusive.
So speaking of inclusivity, how is this contrasting from Reaganomics, where in the 1980s we had more tax cuts rather than tax hikes, which are a big part of this Biden plan and a lot of trickle-down kind of thinking of economics?
Yeah, so look, Reaganomics was trickled down, right? Cut taxes, massive deregulation. In fact, President Trump also very much put that into effect as well. But, it actually works well for the stock market, for the economy, and for the wealthiest. The problem is trickle down doesn't really make it all the way down to the millions of Americans that have been left behind from the last financial crisis and whose condition, financial and other condition today, is even worse because of COVID. So how it contrasts with Reaganomics is that Bidenomics is all about really focusing as much of the government spending as possible on the middle class and below, people that have really been left behind and really need to be lifted up, whether it's the child tax credit, whether it's spending on other social programs. That's the key difference. In addition to that, just quickly, as you mentioned, Biden wants to raise taxes on companies and the wealthiest Americans, on families making over $400,000 a year. It's 1.8% of American households. The view within the Biden administration is there is some redistribution that is warranted from companies and the wealthiest to help pay for this spending.
Hey, Charles, you mentioned the idea of economic growth, and that's obviously something the Biden administration is going for. It's something that he said, he wants to build back better, because even going into the pandemic, despite the fact that we were in a tight labor market, the GDP growth in the U.S. was relatively modest. What specific plans does the Biden administration need to put into place to ensure that he indeed does build back better, that there will be sustained economic growth in the U.S.?
Well, I think that's the central part of his infrastructure plan, right? There are two different plans, but in aggregate, the $4.2 trillion of potential upcoming infrastructure spending, that $4.2 trillion is over 8 years. So the Build Back Better is to actually invest in infrastructure and other programs that actually will keep this economy not only in recovery, but really keep the economy booming. They're calling it the Biden boom, which is about to happen. I think it's already started. But to keep it going, not only through the midterms next year, but even as Jamie Dimon suggested, into 2023 and beyond, in the eyes of the Democrats, hopefully into 2024, so they can hold the White House.
But Charles, even though that there's this Biden boom and this great optimism, there's a lot of contention in these plans. So where is Biden going to meet the most resistance from Congress? Taxes seem to be the big hot-button issue, but are there other things, and are they going to keep these plans from coming to fruition at any point?
Yeah, so you raise a really important point, which is how much of this $4.2 trillion spending can Biden get approved by Congress, and also how much of his tax increases can he get approved to help pay for it. And I think where there's going to be a lot of negotiation is, first, some of the spending will have to be cut back. He's asking for hundreds of billions of dollars for things like dependent care, child care, $400 billion for universal pre-K and for community college. those programs ultimately and spending will have to be scaled back. On the tax increase, though, I would say that while there's clear pushback from Republicans, the Democrats are going to do that, the tax increases, through the budget reconciliation process, which only requires 51 votes. I think that one of the risks in the markets today is that people are underestimating how much corporate and personal taxes will go up, because there is much greater buy-in amongst the Democratic caucus in Congress to raise corporate tax, to raise tax on households making over 400. So again, there will be some compromise, but taxes are going up to help pay for this. And I think the markets are not completely prepared or haven't completely discounted that yet.
Charles Myers, that's the founder and chairman of Signum Global Advisors, also as a bundler for Joe Biden. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for watching Bloomberg Quicktake Now. Subscribe to our channel to see the biggest stories the moment they happen from around the world. And tune in to our 24/7 live stream for global news coverage, interviews, deep dive shows, and documentaries on the stories you care about most.